Welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Winter. I make videos on hoodoo, commentary, and the occasional vlog. I am so happy that you are here. I am on every single social media platform. My @ name is the same, @LilSnowBabe. I do have a podcast. I'm in the 3rd season. It is exclusively on Apple Podcasts. While we wait, the podcast about abstinence. Yes, abstinence. Yes, abstaining from sex. I have been abstaining for a couple of years now. And yes, I am waiting for marriage. And that is what the podcast is about. And yes, I have guests. If podcasts aren't your thing, that's fine. But I do want to let you know that my channel is mostly audio. So I am not often on camera. Hope that's okay. I really like long form discussion videos. Every now and then my videos are accompanied by some research. So in the description box down below, you will always find my sources. And I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone who has been supporting While We Wait, the podcast about abstinence, exclusively available on Apple Podcasts. I also want to thank everyone who is subscribed to my YouTube channel. It means a whole lot to me. I do have a video about Black women in luxury that Jackiana has seen, liked, watched, and commented on. That was a passion project video of mine. It took me quite a long time to make, mostly due to the editing, but also just due to wanting to make sure I was saying things how I wanted to say them. Please do check that video out if you have the time. I am getting that video to 10,000 views. It'll be linked. And let's get into today's video. The first film that featured a Black couple in an intimate moment was in the 1898 silent film Something Good, Negro Kiss. It is a 29-second film that starred Saint Subtle and Gertie Brown. They are both seen embracing, holding hands, kissing, while smiling and laughing. It's innocent and short, but this was eventually added to the Library of Congress National Film Registry in 2018. I've watched this short silent film over and over and over, and it's left me wondering how we have strayed so far from our very first depiction of Black joy, Black love, Black embrace, Black people just being happy. When I think about most Black love films and Black love stories, at first I'm happy because they bring up really good memories, but then I start to think about them a little bit more and I'm like, oh shoot, these films are toxic as fuck. Like, these films are not good. Love and Basketball, Love Jones, Poetic Justice. I know, all of them really aren't good. Baby Boy, don't get me started. That one right there, the infantilization of Black men and the abuse of Black women in that film is actually frightening when you go back and rewatch it. So when you look at Something Good, Negro Kiss, an 1898 silent film, and have the context that this is the first film that featured a Black couple in an intimate moment, it makes you wonder, well, how do we go from this to contemporary depictions of Black love? Films that we're making for us, by us. You know, how do we get from Saint Subtle and Gertie Brown just hugging and kissing and being happy to women getting hit and being called out of their name, to men getting hit and being called out of their name, to violence and rage and all of these things that don't bring up really good, warm and fuzzy feelings. And I mean, I guess we could say, you know, capitalism, America, all the things, but this is 1898 and Black folks have been through a lot by 1898, yet the first time we make a film that features a Black couple, we do this. That's what we want to see. So it makes me kind of wonder, you know, why do we produce things that I would argue make us go backwards. And here's the thing. I understand that the depictions of Black love in films like Love Jones, Baby Boy, Love and Basketball, Poetic Justice, so on and so forth, are realistic. Yes, those are people's real experiences as well. Absolutely. But we have to remember that media is a very strong tool for programming. And how many times are we gonna make the same movie? Black woman struggles, Black woman gets beat, Black woman gets called out of her name, Black woman struggles even some more. Black woman falls in love with man who she thinks is good, turns out he's no good. Then Black woman falls in love with the man who is good, but then marries a man who ain't no good, and then just kind of enters this never-ending cycle until she is either rescued by a white man, who she somehow falls in love with, or she actually settles for this man who really truly is no good, who through the birth of a daughter or a child or through some, very altering event in his life, something that's usually catastrophic that probably leaves him injured or leaves a friend of his injured, changes his ways and becomes a quote unquote good man for this woman. How many times y'all want to watch that movie? Because I'm kind of tired of it. It's boring and I don't want to see it no more. I don't want to see it no more. And after the intimate debut of Subtle and Brown's interaction in the film, audiences wouldn't be able to see another African-American couple showing their passion on the big screen until many, many years later. And African-American studios like the William Foster Studio and the Lincoln Motion Picture Company were rising and turning heads with their work. Many of their acclaimed works were stories that were rebuting the racist rhetoric that was being produced by white men like D.W. Griffith, who directed the infamous 1950 film, The Birth of a Nation. If you haven't watched that film, you don't got to watch it. You don't have to. I don't care what nobody says. People love to say, you have to watch it to understand the fundamentals. No, you don't. I don't see why we continue to give that film play. No, we can write about it. We don't have to watch it. But anyway, that's what happens. And unfortunately, blackface and the stereotypes of African Americans became the norm. And to this day, the trend has yet to subside, even from us, right? Sometimes I think we want to point the finger so bad that we forget to point the finger at ourselves. And today we need to point the finger at ourselves a little bit, especially with our Black love films. The Black community has allowed for a generational stigma of the desensitized male to be the ideal form of its men. This stigma seeps into nearly every form of media depicting men of color, but more subtly in Black romances. So what's happening in a lot of Black love films is that the Black man, protagonist of the film, usually is devoid of real emotions, right? He is either brutish or he's just overly emotional, but in a violently extreme way. He's often not written as a very well-rounded character, and being emotionally stunted is like a prerequisite. It's almost like if he's not emotionally stunted, it's not realistic. So that's something we've done. We have written that character over and over. Black folks have written that character over and over. And yes, I understand that you can argue that men like that exist. Of course, we know men like that exist, but why continue to program our men to be like that in their depictions in the media? People believe what they see. People believe what they hear. People believe what they're taught. So if we continue to teach young Black boys that this is what you will grow into, why are we surprised when that is what they grow into? The reason why I love the photograph so much is because I really feel like for the first time in a long time, we've gotten this beautifully well-rounded, emotional Black male protagonist. He is a lover. He is a man. He is a human being. He's a regular person who feels his emotions. And not only does he feel them, but he expresses them. And he's not perfect at expressing them. He even has to get told off. But when he gets told off, when he gets reprimanded, his response is not that of violence. His response also isn't initially to push back. He goes, oh, like, didn't realize I was doing that. Sorry, let me figure out why I'm doing that. And when I do figure out why I'm doing it, I'm going to address it. We don't get to see that very often. We hardly ever get to see that in Black male characters, and even less so in a Black male character that is a protagonist in a love story, because usually all of that work is put onto the Black woman. And that's boring. But, more recently, the genre has become less saturated with films like that, that are boring, where the woman has to do all the work. And it's shown more potential in narratives where Black men can be vulnerable and fall in love in healthy ways. Barry Jenkins' Moonlight, which, y'all, I watch Moonlight at least 10 times a month. I'm not exaggerating. I will watch Moonlight just to go to bed. It's such a beautiful film. My God, these Black boys get to feel, they get to cry, they get to process. And it's slow, because that's what life is like sometimes when you're processing emotions of hurt, of trauma, of love, of confusion, of figuring out your sexual identity. That's real. It's not rushed because there's no need to rush it. So Barry Jenkins' Moonlight breaks down the toxic masculinity significantly by giving us the layered portrayal of Chiron. He's a victimized Black boy growing up in Florida and struggling with his self-identity. And Jenkins masterfully shows the masculinity of Chiron in a fluid manner, which results in a character that feels more like the marginalized majority of an emotional Black man today. See, I don't know if Black writers realize that they have been, for a long time, continuing to hold up stereotypes and tropes. You can depict, the Black men around you that you see, but honing in on one or two aspects of the personality, one, does them no justice, but also doesn't do the greater population of Black men or Black people justice. The drug dealer has feelings too. The thug has feelings too. They all have feelings. And I think it's time we start to explore those feelings instead of just being like, this is an angry drug dealer. He does a bad thing. He falls in love with a woman. He takes all his anger out on her. And then she just forgives him because he suddenly one day wakes up and changes his mind. That's not happening. No, that's not what's really happening. And then what you're doing too is you're also teaching women that oh, this is okay. You're teaching young girls that, oh, this is fine. He might beat you. He might lock you in closets and things. He might lie, cheat, steal, endanger your life. But one day, sweetheart, he's going to wake up because you're pregnant, and he's going to just change his life around, and things will get better. No, please stop teaching young girls this. And also please stop teaching young boys this. Having a child is not when you're suddenly supposed to wake up and be a better person. You should just be a better person because you want to be a better person. And also your kids are not going to make you a better person. Trust me. All your kids are really going to do is show you how not great of a person you actually are. And they're going to struggle with that even more. And then you're probably going to take that anger out on your kids. And see how the cycle continues? Exactly. We are perpetuating that by continuing to write these characters who are so one-dimensional and flat. And I mean flat. Flat, 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 flat. The importance of Black love stories is, has nothing to do with, how stylistically beautiful they can be. It's really about more diverse storytelling and realistic storytelling, because we really need to show young Black boys and girls and just young Black children and people how rounded of a soul that they have. Representation in white-led romances still dominates the genre of, romance and like rom-com films. And we don't have to exactly follow their formulas, nor do our characters have to behave like their characters. I think a lot of times too, what people are feeling is that what we're asking or calling for from our Black creatives, our Black directors and film writers and producers and actors is that we want them to kind of plug in Black characters to already written and filmed white love stories and films. That's not what we want. I don't want that. I don't want to see... I can't even name one. Oh my God, y'all. Yikes. Oopsies. Oops. What is a white love story? I don't know. Anyway. Well, that shows you what I watch. I don't want to see Black characters plugged into white love stories. I want to see Black people in love experiencing the reality of it. I don't want somebody writing about characters they don't know in their real life. They always say, write what you know, because that's what you'll write best. And I think a lot of times we want to romanticize these parts of Black culture and Black identity that we don't actually know best. I think especially those who get put in these positions to produce these kind of works. I think if you don't have a drug dealer best friend, right? If you don't have a friend who actually is a single mom, like don't write the story. Not saying you can't write the story and write it well, but like ask yourself why you even want to write that story, and what messages are you really trying to get across when you write that story. The biggest critique that the photograph received was that it was boring and slow and not exciting. And I always want to push back against that, because I'm like, what, tell me what was exciting about Poetic Justice. Tell me what was exciting about Love and Basketball. Tell me what was exciting about Love Jones. Tell me what was exciting about Stella Got Her Groove Back. Like, tell me what was exciting about those Black love stories. And when people start to tell me what that excitement was, it was trauma, violence, and abuse. But they didn't realize that, right? To them, it's the drama, it's the excitement, right? It's the fieriness. Those are all really nice, pretty words to cover up violence, abuse, and trauma. Manipulation. The list goes on and on and on and on. And we don't realize that has been so normalized in our love stories that we think that is the marker of a good love story, and that is actually love. You must struggle. It must be hard. You might even have to get beat. But in the end, that's a strong Black love. It's not a strong Black love. It's an abusive, fractured, broken, horrible cycle. Like that we should stop telling the story of. And maybe, okay, whoopsie, that's a little extreme. Maybe not stop telling the story of, because it is some people's story, but we could tell it less often. Like, I would like to see more of the photographs. I would like to see more. And here's the thing. There was violence in the Moonlight. Of course there was violence in Moonlight. Yes, and there was even violence in their love. But here's the thing. It wasn't. Although they did have that fight that was instigated, they were children. And that was due to the product of their environment and just, all the other workings. But, you could argue that the true violence of Moonlight is really the neglect that they experienced as children, and that forcing them to make choices that maybe if they had experienced different upbringings, they wouldn't have. With each other, that fight, how Chiron even dealt with his bully, all of that. But that's another video. Anyway, there is violence in that film, yes, but the violence is not in the relationship, right? They don't become boyfriends and then are abusive and toxic towards each other, and then suddenly one day one of them just becomes a good guy. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I think is very dangerous, and that's the story I think we keep telling that I don't want us to tell anymore. In the Photograph, honestly, for the first time, for me, I feel like, from what are my Black love stories, my Black love films, what I grew up watching, there's no film like The Photograph, where two Black people literally just meet each other, get to know each other, fall in love, have to deal with their emotion. Like, the toughest parts of that film are them having to address their feelings. And the moment in the film where they have to take space from each other, where he leaves, he takes that job, she stays. They don't speak for a couple of weeks, or I think it's about a couple of months. I don't remember, but they don't speak for an extended amount of time. And during this time, they are processing their feelings for each other and their romance, and they're trying to figure out, damn, okay, being in a relationship takes work. And if we're going to do this, we both have to be willing to do that work. So how do we go about this? And in the end, it's Issa's character that flies out to him, because they had, remember, already gotten these tickets. Like, this was something that they had planned. And that's what I love too about it. Like, they never really broke up in the film. And I wouldn't even argue that they took a break. I really feel that moment where they were separated from each other, and I mean, yeah, they were separated by land and continent. So, I mean, that's kind of extreme. But I don't think that was really supposed to signify a breakup or even a break. I think that was really supposed to signify, like, how literally how you can feel worlds apart when it comes to expressing how you feel for a person. When the relationship shifts in dynamic and intensity, when the relationship goes from this is fun and we're getting to know each other and it's a whirlwind to, oh, this is kind of getting serious. Like, I think this is my person. Oh, maybe it's gone from I love them to I'm in love with them. It's gone from I could see myself with them for a couple of months, weeks, years, to I could see myself with them for the rest of my life. Like, expressing those kind of things can make you feel so overwhelmed that you feel like you are on the other side of the world from your partner, because one, you don't know if your partner feels that way 100%, because this I operate as, when things are not explicitly said, they're not explicitly said. So you're always assuming. And the both of them had to admit that they were assuming a lot of things about each other and also how each other were feeling. And that was causing friction in their dynamic. But it was just felt so good to just not see them ever raise a hand at each other. They barely even raised their voices at each other. There were a couple times, they get a little loud in their conversations, but there weren't montages of screaming and berating each other. They never really spoke down to each other. They would just have these really hard and really intense conversations about how they felt, because that is emotions and that is real life. And I want us to do more of that, because I also want Black men, Black boys, Black girls, Black women, Black people to see ourselves on screen, processing how we're feeling and moving forward with it, not bottling it up inside, because it doesn't only have to apply to romance. It doesn't have to only apply to our romantic relationships. It can apply to all of our relationships. Just sit down and have the conversation. I know it's going to be hard. It's not always fun, but it brings forth success. Like, it really brings forth success. And something else that was really interesting and beautiful about the film is that Lakeith Stanfield's character, Michael Block, is like, he's like almost every other scene, the character, his big brother, played by Lil Rel, it calls him out. Like, when do we ever see that? Like, every time Lakeith's character was basically being a fuckboy or being selfish or withholding information from Issa's character because he, wasn't expressing his feelings, and he, was just withholding and holding back. Lil Rose character was calling him out. Like, every single time he'd be like, you need to talk to her. That was selfish. That's not how you act. Like, he was such a good accountability partner, a good friend, a good brother, and another example of a black man. And let's talk about, again, the casting. First of all, everybody is brown. Okay? Brown, because the beige agenda is strong right now. The beige agenda is strong right now. And how often do we get to see dark-skinned black men depicted in that way? Because Lil Rose's character was a loving and doting father. Okay. He was an amazing husband in that film, attentive, caring, loving, doting, but he was stern. He got serious when he needed to, but he was great. He was great, and he wasn't afraid to call out his brother's behavior. And on the flip side of that, as I mentioned earlier, Lakeith Stanfield's character would receive that critique, would receive that feedback, and he would actually apply it, right? Those scenes where he would get called out for his behavior, his selfishness, his, absent-mindedness, or his lack of considering her feelings, And what was beautiful, too, is like when they would have these conversations as brothers, it was never framed as really like, you're being a bad man or whatever. It was really more so framed like you have maybe only been in one or two very serious relationships. They were also different. They kind of alluded that one of his past relationships might have been, not so healthy for him emotionally. And so, of course, that causes trauma, and you have to work through that, whatever. But that also was a really good, it was a really subtle, thing, and they kind of glossed over it. But again, it wasn't a major plot point, so that's fine. But, there was a conversation to be had there about how we do carry in our past relationship traumas into our new ones, and how, if you come out of something that wasn't so good for you and you go into something that's new and it's better for you, that not even the self-sabotage conversation, because he wasn't self-sabotaging the relationship. He just didn't know, how to handle the relationship. And he was doing all he could, with what he had, with the information that he had. He was doing all he could. And thankfully, he had this brother of his who was like, hey, I noticed, I noticed that you're in a really good thing, and you are appreciative of this really good thing that you're in, that you have, but you don't really know how to accept it or receive it and also take care and nurture it. So here, let me, hold you accountable, and let me also nurture you. That's what people don't talk about. Their relationship as brothers, very nurturing. Oh, very, very nurturing. And it's extremely important that Lil Rose's character looks the way he does and is a nurturing big brother. But very nurturing. He was very tender with Lakeith's character. He was so tender when he was speaking to him about expressing his feelings and not withholding things with Issa's character, but also with having to let him know, hey, you fucked up. That was the wrong thing to do, but that's okay. You didn't know, you didn't know. You've never been in this situation before. You've never experienced this. So let me teach you. And I just think that that's just that's such a beautiful thing, because we don't get it. We don't get it enough. And honestly, The Photograph's one of those films where, you have me at hello. Like, literally, he sees Shorty in the gallery. He looks her up, finds her. Doesn't really find her. He just looks her up and is just like, oh, like, she's like kind of a big deal after they have their first introduction meeting. But it literally is one of those, like, you have me at hello. The man literally sees her at the gallery, speaks to her, she speaks back, and they have they instantly click. But I also like that it wasn't over romanticized. They didn't make it unrealistic. Like, it wasn't just like people just fell in love and it was perfect. It was like, okay, so look, there's immediate mutual attraction. Okay, people have sex. They also realized that they probably shouldn't have had sex as fast as they did. And I also like that after that initial like sex scene that they actually pulled back with that. I don't know if people noticed that, but after that initial sex scene, they don't have, well, on screen, and I think if it's not on screen, that means you're supposed to think that it's also not happening off screen, really. They don't really have sex again for a couple of scenes, and that's very key. That is extremely important, because I think in a lot of our Black love films, our main characters are having sex quite a bit. There's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing bad with it, but when they have sex is, again, a programming. So it's like, if it's after an argument, after throwing things at each other and calling each other bad names and hitting each other and things like that, and then you have sex, like that's a program. And the younger you are, the more serious of a program that is. And I don't know if y'all have ever caught on to that, but I have. And I personally, my beliefs, that's not a good thing, right? You don't want to program people to think that after you hurt someone, you are then to be rewarded with their body. That's not okay. So I'll put that out there. So I like that in the film, that after that first time that they have sex, they kind of have this like brief, conversation. And then the film itself is a larger conversation in, okay, let's pull back because we kind of did just meet. You know what I mean? Like, you are a whole stranger. And let's also not make this relationship of ours, the sex, the basis of it. Right? Because before we're even boyfriend and girlfriend, we are two people getting to know each other. We are two strangers getting to know each other. So we have to build a solid foundation, which means the sex and the body and the carnalness of it all cannot be our basis, because we will implode. And the film addresses that. And I think that's so wonderful. Like, I'm getting emotional. Like, I just think it's so wonderful. I think the photograph is just so wonderful, and I could talk about it for 85 hours because it does so many things in such a short amount of time that, honestly, most of our Black love films don't do and haven't really ever done. I just think that the photograph is a really beautiful film, and it does so many things extremely well that a lot of Black films that are around love, that are centered around two people falling in love, haven't done before. And you know what else is really interesting too? The photograph, very subtly and basically silently, is also just about Black success and just success in general. The characters never, like, overtly discuss their success, their wealth, their affluence, or anything like that. It's just what it is, right? The brother of Lakeith's character lives in a beautiful home with his wife, right? Lakeith himself, the character, wears quite expensive clothing. Nothing like super, garish, like no real garish, what you call it? I want to say symbols, because that's what they are. They're symbols. What are they called? Brands. Thank you. No like garish brands on him or anything, but the clothing is expensive. He's also a sought after writer, which, let's stop right there. Writer. This Black man is a writer, and he's highly sought after. Like, he's the premier writer, basically, for what he does. That's amazing. Like, what? Huh? What? Man, Black men are rarely writers in a film. And rarely are they depicted as sought after, as successful, as better than all of their counterparts. White, anybody, don't matter. This Black man is the best writer you're gonna meet. Like, that is how his character is introduced to us. His current publication that he worked for doesn't even want him to leave and take this new job he gets offered in London. His white boss is like, oh my God, please don't go. Like, you are the best thing out here. His white male peers are also like, you are the best thing out here. Listen to me, that doesn't happen in film regularly. But again, it's just normalized. It's just normal. Like, it's just a thing in the film. It's just a thing in the film. Issa is an amazing curator and really artist in her own right in the way that she's archiving her mother's work. Like, it's just a thing. You know, like, it's just a thing. Just regular. Her apartment, gorgeous. But even going further back, looking at her mother's story, her mother landing that gig and getting that beautiful loft. And like, there's just so much success in this film. Like, yeah, the stories, you know, the subplots get difficult when we deal with Issa's birth story. And she finds out that, you know, her father is really her stepfather, and the story between her mother, her real father. Like, you know, that's hard to take in. That's difficult. But again, it wasn't that there was like abuse there or violence, anything. No, this man, Issa's character's true father, biological father, loves her mother so much, right? That he goes, okay, you know, like, okay, you want to go to New York? You want to become an amazing photographer, world renowned? And he wasn't ready to leave where he was from. He wasn't comfortable yet. He didn't feel prepared to leave his comfort zone, so he didn't. But he, of course he protested a little bit, and, you know, but he didn't stop her. I think a lot of films would have made it like, oh, the romantic thing would have been either one, him following her to New York, or one, him stopping her by doing some, you know, grand gesture, whatever, like just something, but like something where the choice ultimately doesn't belong to her anymore. Like, well, really, he made the choice for her. She didn't make a choice for herself, right? So it was really nice there to even see that, okay, even though they separated and she has this child and she's a single mother and she, you know, goes through what she goes through, figuring life out like that, successful. You know, she gets married, she has her child, she raises a beautiful family, they have a great life. Like, she's successful. You know, you cut your losses here and there, but she's successful. So her daughter is successful in love as well, and just successful in life as well. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And the film does it like silently. It never really addresses it out there. It's not forward about it. It's just something you just take away with you from the film. I remember my first time watching it, I cried. I cried in the movie theater. I was really moved. I really was like, oh my God. These people just, like, they just fell in love and they get to be happy in the end. Like, nothing else happens. And I can admit that while I was watching it, I kind of was like a little bit holding my breath, because I was like, oh man, I just feel like, I don't know, something's gonna happen. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Something always happens. And that's horrible. That's horrible. I couldn't even sit and really just enjoy this film and take it for what it was in the moment, because I was so used and conditioned to thinking and expecting, because it's true in the cinematic universe, that something was going to happen. You know, like, oh, so she's going to find out something about him, or he's going to find out something about her, or just like, oh, tragedy. And it's like, no tragedy. No tragedy. Just like real life shit. Emotions. Like, that's it. Real life shit. Emotions. But we work through it and we find success. And that's really what the photograph is about. But the photograph is about Black success, period. So that's love. You know, that's money, that's career, friendship. It's everything. It's just about success. Like, Black people, you get to just be successful sometimes. Like, nothing bad has to happen. You don't have to go through these crazy, tumultuous times. You go through real stuff. Yeah, you go through human emotions. Yeah, you have hard what? Can I speak? You go through hard conversations. You have to process some heavy things, but in the end, you are successful and you will have happiness. It just will happen, because that's what happens. That's how the story ends. Imagine if more of our stories did that. What would that do for us as a collective in our psyche if more of our stories did that?